Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is another Roma Press live stream. The season is over, and we are right at the beginning of what will be a very busy summer for Roma. We are here today to discuss a bit the news that have been circling around, give a brief overview of the various areas that Roma will need to address in this transfer market, which will be the first one with Daniele De Rossi as head coach and Florent Ghisolfi as the team technical director. So we will have plenty also of names that we can discuss and share on here, because as always, the rumor mill never stops. There is always a new name just around the corner. Every day there is new rumors regarding players that Roma may or may not be interested in, and teams that may be interested in certain players of AS Roma. So I wanted to welcome everybody that is here today with me. I don't expect a large crowd, but I thought it would be a good time to sort of give each other an update on what's going on, especially because this week there will be only one episode. We released a few days ago the wrap up, the review of the season that just came to an end with John. So given the absence of interesting, really interesting discussion points over this last week, we decided to give each other a bit of a break. I'll do this live stream, and then we'll be back in the recording booth with John, probably on Sunday, so that the new episode will be released next Monday. In between, obviously, we have preparations leading up to the Euros. So we have some of Roma players off to international duty with Italy. Lorenzo Pellegrini, Brian Cristante, Gianluca Mancini, and Stefano El Shaarawy have all been included in Italy's provisional squad. And the definitive one, I believe, will be released sometime in the next few days. We will see if, for example, Stefan El Shaarawy makes the cut. I have some doubts regarding his position there, although I truly believe he's coming off a remarkable season with Roma. We have also, obviously, links with a lot of exciting players, and the main ones you'll see in the thumbnail to this live stream, which is Jonathan David of Lille, and also, obviously, the big time player that a lot of people seem to be excited about, Federico Chiesa. Now, there is a lot of questions about how Roma can afford some of these players, and we can get into that as well. But first of all, I just wanted to quickly just read off the first greetings from Vic. Buongiorno. And we got Pinaka. Ciao tutti. Yes. And thank you for being here with me. If you have any questions, any comments, any talking points that you want me to mention, please write them down in the comment section, and I'll make sure to read them as I will roll along. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please click the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, this is the time to do it. Click on the subscribe button, and this is where you will get access to all of the podcast episodes in video format, as well as the occasional live stream that I like to schedule every now and then, usually once a week. I try to do my best, and probably there's going to be more content rolling along in the summer with John. We also plan to release some permanent videos, some insightful stuff about Roma, the history of it. There's going to be some interesting things probably coming along in the next few weeks or so. So keep an eye on out. And if you like what we do at Roma Press, please consider becoming a patron. It really helps. If you go to patreon.com/Roma Press, we appreciate any kind of contribution. It's just John and I doing everything. So it helps us keep going. So thank you so much. And let's get this program underway. I think we can all start from the main, I think, storyline of last week, which was this back and forth of Paulo Dybala and his future at Roma. One of the main conclusions from last season was without Champions League football, it's going to be problematic. And truth be told, it's always like that. If you miss Champions League football 5 years in a row, it means you're doing something wrong. And I think the Friedkins realized this. They realized that what they had imagined would work in the long run did not work in the long run. It worked in the short run with Mourinho. It won you a Conference League trophy, but it got you into a Europa League final. But going forward, there was certain things that did not click. And so the natural sort of conclusion from this failed Champions League qualification would be Roma having to say goodbye to some of its most important players. And uh, Paulo Dybala is easily Roma's biggest name on the roster, given that Romelu Lukaku, who is expected to go back to Chelsea, was on loan. Paulo Dybala, next to Lukaku, was the biggest name and is the biggest name of AS Roma. With Roma missing out on, once again, Champions League football, there was this preconceived notion that Paulo Dybala may look around and choose to go somewhere else, because at the end of the day there is a release clause still present in his contract, and it's valid for clubs outside of Italy. It is a release clause of 12 million euros, and a lot of teams in the past, including last year, the likes of Chelsea and Atletico Madrid, showed interest in activating this release clause. In the end, they did not, but it's there, and it will be there until the last day of July. GL, hola, greetings from Peru. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for following us all the way from Peru. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. It means a lot to get this diverse crowd in for these live streams. It's always a pleasure to hear where you guys are all from. So we have already seen 20, 30 names being linked to Roma on Roma Press, including Kieza and David. How much credibility should we give those rumors if we are also reading that Ghisolfi hasn't arrived yet? Pinaka, Ghisolfi is in Rome right now, and that was also on Roma Press. Ghisolfi arrived a couple of days ago. He was caught on video landing in Fiumicino. Reporters and fans alike, they went out to greet him. He did not answer questions from the media. Ghisolfi has already met with Daniele De Rossi and Roma CEO Lina Suluku at Trigoria, and the work has already begun. So I understand there is a lot of names appearing on the website, but that's the norm. That's the norm for the summer, and you have to always come up with it with just a grain of salt as to what are the feasible names. And I think the feasible names, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a player from Ligue 1 or Federico Chiesa. We are going to get into this reality that Roma are navigating in, because I think it deserves a more in-depth story. So going back to Paulo Dybala, there was this belief that with Champions League football, Dybala would push for an exit. Well, a week ago, Paulo Dybala goes on track record with the Athletic, and you can find that interview also on Roma Press. Um, Paulo Dybala expressed his desire to win everything there is to win with Roma, and he expressed this desire to stay in Italy. That's where he feels most comfortable in. He's about to get married. He doesn't plan to try new things outside of Italy, despite rumors of him being interested in the Premier League. Now, that has to always be the ultimate objective for a footballer of his caliber, going to the arguably best league in the world, or so they say. But that's not on Paulo Dybala's priority list. The priority is to stay at Roma. That's what the player said. So, with that in mind, the Friedkins have already communicated to Dybala that they do not plan on letting him go, that they will fulfill a very considerable obligation in terms of financial effort, because Paulo Dybala, starting next season, will earn 8 million euros. His salary, once he agreed to come to Roma, the agreement included a salary that would increase with every season. Paulo Dybala will earn 8 million euros. That's a sum of money that Roma are willing to pay him. There is also an option in Paulo Dybala's contract. It's not an option; it becomes an obligation for him to extend his contract for an additional year if within next season he's able to complete over 50% of appearances. So that's something that we should keep an eye out on, because Paulo Dybala right now has a contract that is valid until 2025, and it could be extended for an additional year. With Paulo Dybala staying, I think the whole concept of this summer changes. The whole dynamic changes, because Paulo Dybala not only is an important name off the pitch as a brand. When you want someone to represent your club, you want that Paulo Dybala face on any kind of merch. Paulo Dybala is also incredibly important on the pitch as well for Daniele De Rossi, with De Rossi also potentially opting for formations that may include a false nine, such as Paulo Dybala, because Paulo Dybala can play in that position. That alternates all the entire setup that Roma will use next season onwards. You've certainly seen plenty of reports claiming that Roma will want to utilize a 4-3-3 formation next year, which immediately gives you food for thought with regards to the number of strikers that we had available this past season, with Asmun and Belotti and Lukaku all at the same time at some point in the season. With De Rossi, that's not going to be the case. If De Rossi wants someone to come in, it's going to be a solid replacement for Romelu Lukaku. And then the big question mark, in my opinion, is Tammy Abraham. What do you think will happen to Belotti? He seems to always put the work in, but doesn't always work. Doesn't always get the results. Yeah, well, the Belotti, as I said, was included right in this. He got an extension last year. For whatever reason, I think it was just exactly to reward his effort. That did not translate to results on the pitch, and his stay at Fiorentina was not successful. He makes a lot of money. He earns quite considerable wages, and that is a problem for the teams that are interested in him, such as Parma and Como. So smaller teams that, obviously, Como, very wealthy ownership still. If a player makes 2.5 million euros a year, that will always be a problem for a team like Como. So just a newly promoted side, there are things you can and cannot do. I think Belotti will have to accept a pay cut if he wants to see any playing time elsewhere, because it's not going to happen for him at Roma. Hi, Andy. I hope all good, man. I like some of the names we are linked to, but we are cashing out a star, bringing one of Manchester City's modern accountant. Listen, there is plenty of names that have appeared, and with Paulo Dybala staying, Roma do not lose the appeal. With Paulo Dybala staying, Roma suggests that they have the strength, the financial strength, to keep the important pieces, the pieces that matter, but also to make important decisions with regards to the roster, because there is going to be several players leaving the club, and there is no intention in extending any one of them. So Roma did not pursue any kind of negotiation for Romelu Lukaku, who is going back to Chelsea. They will not pursue any negotiation for Sardar Azmoun, who will return to Bayer Leverkusen. Roma haven't initiated any talks for Leonardo Spinazzola, who's about to become a free agent. All these names, they stack up, and all these names would allow you to save a lot of money, cut the wage bill by a considerable amount, and more importantly, the annual costs, because someone like Leonardo Spinazzola was weighing you down massively. There are also names that Roma will look at and hope to sell, because we have exactly the likes of Tammy Abraham, Nicola Zalewski, both players who haven't performed up to a certain standard that Roma want to keep, and they are on the transfer list. So most importantly, as I said, Dybala being one of them, there is a list of players that Roma are not willing to put on the transfer block. And those names obviously are, we all know them, the usual suspects: Cristante, Pellegrini, Mancini, Paredes, who under De Rossi are untouchable. But then there is this, for me, this is very important. Evan Dika and Miles VR, both players who have a massive potential, are coming off a really good season. I think especially Sviar, just by the sheer amount of quality that he showed in such a brief period of time in the second half of the season, has gotten a lot of attention from the Premier League. Roma will not let them go. The fact that we can, that we know this, and the fact that we can rely on this is, I think, very important, given where we are as a club, given the fact that, again, we failed to qualify to Champions League football for the fifth year in a row. That's massive, because we all remember, obviously, the summers where we would have to sacrifice. And sacrifice we did, not only under Palotta, but also the Friedkins. Obviously, with the Friedkins, a little less so. The first year of the Friedkins, obviously, we had a bit more leeway. Last year, we sacrificed, like him or not, we sacrificed Roger Ibanez. This year, however, we are going into this summer with a much more positive outlook, which surprised me. It surprised John for sure. But I think that is credit to the work that our CEO, Lina Soluco, has accomplished uh, within a year of her being here. Lina Soluco arrived in May of last year, replacing, I think, Pietro Berardi as the CEO. And Alina Sloko is the one who's gotten over the line a number of important deals, including sponsorship deals, partnerships, the stuff that gets the money going. The Roma have increased their earnings, they have increased their revenue, they've cut their losses. That's been massive for Roma. So this season, if all goes well, if the reports are accurate, Roma only need to generate, for financial fair play, something around 10 million euros in off of player sales. So that's massive. Considering last year Thiago Pinto was forced to come up with 40 million, which then eventually got turned into 30 million or so by the end of June. That is huge. That is, it's huge for a club that needs to plan things out and not scramble and force sales of, even including Primavera talents that they do not wish to do, because even if Tiago Pinto got over the lines deals for Missori and Volpato, doesn't mean that Roma wanted to get rid of them. Roma had to get rid of them. If they didn't get rid of them, they would have gotten rid of other players who are more important to the project. Roma has a lot of holes to fill, and unfortunately, that won't happen in the transfer window. What Roma need to do is play their B team and youngsters in Europa and keep starters fit for the league, says Rocco. Roma must get top four at all costs. I do not agree, Rocco, that first of all, that is never a way to approach the season. I do not believe that that is going to be the way Roma will approach the season. You can always build depth. Depth doesn't depend on names, depth depends on functionality. Because if you get a player that is not functional to the way a manager operates, then what do you expect? You cannot expect then to the team to work miracles. But if you get functional players, if you get even low cost deals that contribute to a team that knows how to play and that can handle exactly number of competitions, say Coppa Italia and Europa League, that's all you need. You don't need big names. You need functional names. You need names that are compatible with what De Rossi wants to do next year. That's why I say it's so important for Roma to not have this massive financial fair play hanging over their heads. If these 10 million euros that they have to come up with are true, then that is massive, because then it means you don't have to pay that much attention to those sales. You can actually focus on, first of all, securing the outgoing transfers of players such as Solback and Belotti, Shomurodov, all that stuff that will eventually go away. They will go away. You'll find destinations for them, perhaps not before the end of June, perhaps in July, perhaps in August, but you will find it. And then obviously you have to plan accordingly. You have to plan replacements. You have to find a replacement of Lukaku. You have to find a replacement of Spinazzola, of Karsdorp. You have to find somebody to pair up with Zeki Salik, who is likely to stay. You have to find an alternative to the midfield, because Houssem Aouar is clearly not working, hasn't shown too many promising things so far. And with Renato Sanchez going back to PSG, well, we all know that De Rossi has been vocal about it. He needs more technical players in the midfield, because this roster has been built for a manager that played one way. Now Roma want to play another way. We have to expect a number of players coming in this summer. Reports claim it will be about 5 to 6 players. I think the area that De Rossi wants to prioritize right now is the wings, because so much of his football is based on speed, on good passing, and on good crossing. If you're going to play a 4-3-3, you need good quality wingers. And that's why we get Federico Chiesa. That brings us to this first name that perhaps people are most excited about. Let's see. What do you think the chances of us getting Kieza are? Well, listen, Kieza is an expensive name, because not only for price tag, there is the reported fee of 25 million. I do not think that that is what Juve are asking for, but fine. What the player will want to earn this summer, given that his contract is about to expire next year with Juve, that's going to be, are his salary demands compatible with what Roma want to achieve? As we said before, Roma want to slash their wage bill uh, considerably, by 10 to 15%. And given the fact that they have the third highest wage bill in Serie A, with over 100 million euros in net salary, that's something that Roma will want to avoid, is overpaying players. Can you overpay someone like Federico Chiesa? I do not know. Is that a player who is worth, say, 8 million a year? Given what the recent seasons that he's had with Juventus, the way he struggled under Massimiliano Allegri, obviously we can draw certain conclusions. We also have Daniele De Rossi, who is a big fan of his, and I think the important part about the Federico Chiesa deal is, it is possible if you're able to get rid of a number of players. And if Roma are able to get rid of the likes of not only Spinazzola and Rui Patricio, who are leaving in free agency, but they immediately free up a lot of space. But if you're able to get rid of Tammy Abraham, who weighs massively on your wage bill, and also someone like Marash Kumbula, whose annual cost is through the roof, even that, if you can get those two deals over the line, then getting someone like Federico Chiesa from a financial standpoint going forward is not a problem for Roma. That's what makes me hopeful, if anything. I'm not saying that Federico Chiesa is my first choice, but for those wondering what are the chances, well, Roma are not hopeless. It also depends on what the player wants, because Roma cannot offer him Champions League football. That's not something we can do right now. That we can only offer the fact that if we were to get someone like Federico Chiesa, or as we are going to get into it, Jonathan David, those are two players that would be marquee signings for Roma, which means they would be coming in and like Paulo Dybala in 2022, they would have all the confidence in the world at Roma. They would be the face of the franchise, basically. And that for someone like Chiesa, who's coming off a really difficult stretch with Juve, and even the fact that he's only 1 year away from the expiry of his contract, and there's still no clarity whatsoever regarding his future, confidence is a huge factor in a decision of this kind. Moves need to happen soon with the Euros and Copa America. Any players we're interested in might shine, and we'll get more competition to get them. Yes, that's unavoidable. Whenever there are these competitions, it's always it's also a matter of remember Renato Sanchez, the Euros 2016. God, that was what a player, what a player, and how things turned out for him. Ciao, Andy. Spero stai bene, Nino. Thank you. I am very skeptical about Kieza since we did not qualify for Champions League. Can you explain Roma's current minimum need for financial fair play? Nino, I think I gave a brief overview of it right now. It's if everything goes well, if what the reports state is true, Roma would only need to generate something around 10 million euros, which could easily be achieved by the sale of someone like Nicola Zalewski. So this is all, once again, possible thanks to the sponsorship deals that Roma have gotten over the line with the Riyadh season pouring in over 25 million euros across 2 years. We got also the earnings from the stadium, the massive ticket sales this year. So all of it contributes to a healthier balance sheet for Roma, especially given that Roger Ibanez's sale was registered not for last year but for this year. So that makes sense, and that helps us great in the long run. Let's see. Thank you. Our good friends from Defensive Dynamo podcast. If you're into also Serie A stuff, and especially with a focus on Milan, go check them out. Um, Good point of having functional players who understand the roles, and I think that applies to any team that aspires to do what Atalanta have done over the years. And that's something, guys, we need to keep in mind for the summer. We are talking about Daniele De Rossi, who on numerous occasions spoke in favor of Bayer Leverkusen and Atalanta as the model to follow, as the model that Roma want to follow, which means spend the money wisely, spend it on players who are compatible with the game plan. And also, you as a coach, you have to learn to adapt to them, because one can say a lot of things about someone like Gianpiero Gasperini. He can be a massive D-bag, yes, but he's an incredible coach in being able to read the players that he has at his disposal and revitalizing them when needed. Just look at Charles De Caltera, just look at Gianluca Scamacca. Those are the most recent examples of a coach who knows exactly what to do with players who are coming in off a tough year, and the expectations are not that high. He manages to turn it around for them. Xabi Alonso as well for Bayer Leverkusen. Look at how he turned that ship around. This does not mean that Roma will aim for the Scudetto next year, but this means that Roma want to achieve something in the long run. That Roma, what they are setting off to do now with Daniele De Rossi, who will be announced either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow as Roma's long-term head coach for the next 3 years, with Florent Ghisolfi also signing a contract for 3 years. It's that within these 3 years, we want to build something important. We don't want to build something that will expire in 2025. We want to build something that will lay the foundations for what is to come beyond 2027. Is Fratesi a realistic target? I think he is with our 30% buy clause. What do you think? Well, Roma do have still a percentage on him, but Fratesi, I think we're talking about a guy who earns a lot of money, and who I'm not sure will leave Inter Milan in the situation that he's in. The fact that he didn't play much this season doesn't mean he's not going to play more next season. He found the perfect setup. He's fairly comfortable, I think, with his decision. I think the reports that cite Frattesi as a target are mistaking what De Rossi had said. And when De Rossi lamented Roma's decision to let go of talents like Calafiori or Frattesi, he wasn't taking shots at former Roma executives or presidents or managers. A lot of people thought that the Calafiori comment was a dig at Mourinho. It wasn't. It was just a general discussion about you have to be careful about your talents. You have to be careful and you have to be patient because once again, De Rossi wants patience in letting the players show what they're capable of. Because if you're not patient, even someone like Leandro Paredes ends up rotting on the bench based on what he showed in the first half of the season. But if you stick with him, if you put him in a situation where he can succeed, and that's what something that De Rossi stressed about very much is his ability. De Rossi was very worried in his press conferences on whether he is able to make the players feel comfortable, if he is able to put them in a situation where they can bring out the best of themselves. And was what he said is the number one quality in a coach, is his ability to adapt to the players at his disposal. Now, everything becomes easier if you have players that are made for the way you want to play. That is why De Rossi is stressing very much the importance of having guys who are not afraid of the ball. De Rossi doesn't want to play with counterattack. De Rossi wants to control possession. In order to do it, you need to have midfielders who are not afraid of the ball. You need to have wingers who know how to get a good cross in. Guys, today I was reporting an article on Zaleski, and I looked at his stats, and they're more terrifying than I thought. Zaleski has 106 appearances for Roma, and he's got 7 assists as a wing back and as a winger. With Mourinho, he was playing more defensively. With De Rossi, he was playing a bit more forward. He's got 7 assists in 106 appearances across all competitions. That is something that is mind-boggling, and that is the antithesis of what De Rossi wants to achieve with this team. He wants good ball control. He wants players that want the ball and that know what to do with the ball when they have possession, and that also know what to do when they don't have possession and they're not afraid of it. Because I think the one thing that I came away with this past season is that this Roma team was all over the place. They were built for one way of playing, and whenever the opponent came up with something else, they looked helpless and they questioned themselves. They questioned their own qualities. They questioned the way the team was set up. And that is something we cannot afford in the long run if we want to compete for Champions League qualification all the way until the end. And if we want to qualify for Champions League, we need to be consistent. We need to show continuity. That is what Roma will have to achieve this summer. And that is why you have players like Federico Chiesa, big names. But then you also have to rely on smaller names. You have to sort of follow a model of what Roma did by signing Tommaso Baldanzi in January. And when it happened, I immediately sensed that signing was very atypical for Roma. When was the last time Roma spent 15 million euros? Well, 10 million outright and then 5 million bonuses on a player in January. Because for the last few years, it's always been loan, usually a dry loan or a loan with option to buy, such as Angelino, who Roma signed from Leipzig. It's official for 5 million. But Tommaso Baldanzi was a rare case of Roma actually splashing money in January. And that made me think immediately that Roma were up to something. That Roma, following Jose Mourinho's exit, immediately started thinking into the future. With De Rossi, with Ghisolfi, two guys who are barely 40 years old, you are looking at a revolution, and it will be a revolution because, as we've said, Leonardo Spinazzola, Rui Patricio out as free agents, Andrea Belotti, Ola Solback, and Eldor Shomurodov. Who else? Out, potentially sold, hopefully sold. Then we have Sardar Azmoun, Renato Sanchez, Rasmus Christensen, Dean Huijsen, all of them leaving and returning to their parent clubs. Romelu Lukaku as well. So that's a huge weight off your shoulders. That's a lot of money that you're able to save, and then spend on players that can come in useful. Because if there is something that's bothered me time and time again over the years, is that a lot of the time the players that we brought in couldn't even fulfill the most basic need, which is be useful when you are needed. Someone like Jorginho Wijnaldum, obviously, it's the most notorious case. A player who you got for his experience, for his world class experience, a player who'd won everything with Liverpool, comes in the Europa League final, is not able to contribute, not even a bit. Actually, makes mistakes, and eventually almost costs you the game if it wasn't for the penalty. So the point is usefulness. Someone like Houssem Aouar, do you revitalize him or do you sell him because he's got some interest in France? Those are questions that Roma will have to consider, but that is exciting. That's the exciting part about the summer. So I think the fact that we can have these questions and that we can look forward to a Roma that is strong enough to keep its important pieces in Miles VR, Evan Dika, Paulo Dybala, that is key. That is key to building the right foundations. A club that can't finish better than sixth place shouldn't be prioritizing a second-tier European Cup. We need to return to being a contender in Italy, then build for Europe. Um, but I do not think that unless you finish 10th, like Napoli did this season, and you go out of your way and get Antonio Conte, who loves playing in Italy, doesn't love playing in Europe. I do not think you can make that consideration. I'm interested. I'm interested in what discussions are taking place within Roma's management circle. But even from an image standpoint, the Europa League will always be within reach for you as a team, given how you're built and your reputation and the pedigree over the last few years. I really doubt that you can outright say no, we don't. We're not interested. Bian says hit the like button. Yes, guys, if you haven't hit the like button, please do so right now. It helps getting more people involved. Very sad that this is the state of Tammy's situation at the moment. Do you see no hope for him to recover this form? Also, what do we do with Belotti? So with Belotti, quick answer is we wait for a smaller side, because Belotti right now has no market among any of the top teams in Italy. There's not a single one of them that wants to have anything to do with him. For me, it's going to be a clear case of Belotti going to a team that fights to avoid relegation. With Tammy, the situation is different because, being an English player, he's always going to have some interest in the Premier League. But the truth of the matter is, this is a guy who has barely played in over a year. He's played only a handful of times, scored one goal against Napoli. The few times that we saw him later on the pitch, he left a lot to be desired, and it just wasn't the same Tammy from the first year. And the problem was Tammy's second season was just as dreadful. So we can't really say that this is a player who, prior to his injury, was doing any better. Prior to his injury, Tammy was dreadful. But prior to his injury, Roma were close to selling Tammy to Aston Villa for 40 million euros. And now you'd be lucky to even get half of it, I think. But Tammy Abraham is, in my opinion, from what I understand of all these reports, he is the key to the puzzle. If you are able to sell Tammy Abraham, no, you free up so much space in the wage bill and in terms of annual costs in the balance sheets, that you really can aim for important players like Jonathan David, who will cost you 40 million euros. Jonathan David coming off two remarkable seasons under Paulo Fonseca at Lille. Um, he's off to Copa America with the Canadian national team. He will likely move away from Lille this season, but he's got a number of teams interested in him. Roma are also interested. Can Roma spend 40 million right now? No. It's as simple as that. But if you're able to get rid of Nikola Zaleski, Tammy Abraham, then I think in that case you can really start thinking about that. In the meantime, you have to think differently. You have to prioritize names that are not so obvious. So we have, for example, the striker from Rennes, Arnaud Kalimuendo, who has been called up for the French Olympic team. He finished the season with 15 goals, 5 assists. He's a big talent at 21. He was discovered by Ghisolfi himself when he was at Lens, and Kalimuendo was in PSG's under 19 squad. Since then, Kalimuendo has come a long way, and he's an exciting talent. He's not an obvious a choice, unlike Jonathan David, who has been linked with Napoli and Milan so far. You also have guys, obviously, because of Ghisolfi's connection to France, you have guys like Andy Diouf, also of Lens. So we have him being potentially a replacement of Houssem Aouar for the midfield. So someone who can come in and give guys like Paredes a breather. We also have guys like Prati from Cagliari, a 20-year-old kid whom De Rossi gave a start back in his days at Spal. Prati has had a remarkable season at Cagliari, and he could be, I think, a good replacement for Leandro Paredes, for example. Who would be the ideal profile for our deputy goalkeeper for SVR? Can't see someone like Falcone coming here. No way. No, no way. Falcone for Lecce, they would probably ask you for about 20 to 25 million minimum. Minimum. With VR, Roma got rid of a major headache, which was going to be the goalkeeper for this summer. And that would have been a huge investment because, as we see with Juve and Di Gregorio, these things take time and it's a whole lot of money that Juve are going to splash. It's always like that with Italian goalkeepers. It is always bound to be like that, and so that's why the fact that Sviar had this surprising emergence from the depths of Roma's bench, because it almost seemed like we'd forgotten about him, and the way that Mourinho reluctantly relied on him showed not really much promise as to the player himself. And instead, with De Rossi, Sviar just became an incredible leader on the pitch. Just incredible. I think by having him now and by being able to secure him to a long-term deal, because Roma will increase Zviar's wages. Right now he's making 700,000 euros. So that's the least that any player on the first team makes. And he is going to get a new contract, possibly with an extension until 2029. I think with Zviar staying, it's going to be either you keep Rui Patricio for another year as a backup option, or you get a goalkeeper that is meant to be a backup choice, because someone like Falcone would never come in to play second fiddle to Sviar. Andy, what I mean by prioritizing Serie A is that you don't play your starters. Europa is killing Roma. This year, perfect example. So close to top four, miss out. So close to Europa League final, miss out too. Yes, sure. I agree with you, because we've made these considerations with John over and over. Absolutely, Rocco. I think that's, in the long run, that is something that you have to consider, is whether you are built or not for this. But what I'm saying right now is I don't have any guarantees that Roma will not be able to build some depth, and that's really the only key. Because, mind you, if someone like Houssem Aouar or Renato Sanchez or Rasmus Christensen provides you with positive responses on the pitch, even just those three guys, they make a huge difference. Because with Renato Sanchez and Hussein Mawar delivering good performances and staying fit, you're able to rest the likes of Brian Cristante or Lorenzo Pellegrini. With Rasmus Christensen on the pitch, you can rest Zeki Salik, who proved to be capable of handling his own in the final stretch of the season. So I think it really comes down to what Roma want to achieve this year and what Roma want to achieve this summer. The what is the mission? Is the mission exactly compete on two fronts at once, or put all of the eggs into one basket and aim for Champions League qualification? I do think that from the Friedkin standpoint, there is a bit of a clash, because on one hand they want to keep up the image, which is compete in Europa League, compete in Europe, go as far as you can in those competitions, but also at the end of the day, the Champions League qualification is so vital to the success of this team in the long run, even from a purely financial standpoint, that that is something that is going to be of primary importance. You're right about Awar and Sanchez. Good point. It's what I'm saying, Rocco. It's is that you don't need much to make a difference. Because in my mind, this year, just like last year, remember last year, Roma advance in Europa League. They are sitting third in Serie A, and then Smalling gets injured, and then Paulo Dybala gets injured. That's two players. Now, arguably, those are your two best players at that point, but that's two players. And what happened was you didn't have the depth to be able to compensate for their absence, because who are you going to rely on? Gini Wijnaldum? Gini Wijnaldum, I think, had one good game for Roma, and that was against Sassuolo, I believe. And what else? Because that's the key point, is you don't need much to make a difference. Roma were always inches away, but that's the thing. They were inches away. Then they need Cristiano Ronaldo to come in. They just needed someone to come in, do the job, give someone a rest, a game or two, and that's it. That was all it took, because Paulo Dybala, in the end, at the end of last year, he didn't miss that much time, but he missed crucial games. Just like this year, he missed crucial games against Bayer Leverkusen and Atalanta. Those are two games. You're not asking much, right? You're not asking much out of someone like Houssem Aouar, and yet, it makes a difference. How confident are you that next season the team will be stronger on paper than this season's? On paper, you listen. We are seeing a lot of names now. Say, for example, the latest name on the website is Matteo Politano. Now, I'm pretty sure that is not something that's going to happen. Also, because Matteo Politano is represented by an agent that Roma are not on friendly terms with. But never mind that. If you sign Matteo Politano, whether you like him or not, could be a functional name to the way De Rossi wants to play. Matteo Politano is excellent for a team that wants to play with a 4-3-3. Matteo Politano is coming off his best year at Napoli. 9 goals, 8 assists. Probably carried them along with Kvara in a terrible season. So on paper, that name is dreadful. But what can you tell me about how he performs on the pitch? And if he is put in a situation where he can deliver the kind of performances that he's capable of, then that immediately puts you in an advantage. And that immediately makes you, in my eyes, a much better team than this season. Because what this season showed me is that no matter how good you are on paper, and I think there were some I mean, I was the biggest believer in Samuel, and look at how I ended up criticizing him on here. That's the thing, is you have to understand when someone is functional and when someone is not. Because last season, or this past season, we witnessed a team that was so fragmented, so completely not on the same page, unable to read what the coach wanted from them to start the season with. That is something that in the long run will hurt you, and it hurt us. because you don't get Champions League football because of 4 games, really. I mean, you get right the first 2 games of the season, immediately that puts you in a whole different situation. You win against Salernitana, you win against Hellas Verona, you don't get humiliated by Genoa, and you're looking at a different season. um Tammy is key for this market. Very obvious. The issues might be getting him sold out. Might take the full summer window, and by that time, we would miss out on the available good options and preseason. Um, and those are considerations that you have to make. It's a matter of finding the right intermediaries. It's a matter of good scouting. It's a matter of being on good relations with agents, especially when you're dealing with the Premier League. It's always about having the right people mediating these deals. Now, can Tammy be sold in the Premier League? I still believe that a player like him can be sold at the end of the day to a team like Leicester City, for example, who just got promoted to Premier League and have been linked with him. Will that happen? Now, that's a whole different thing. You're also taking into account what the player wants, and that's something that Roma cannot guarantee. What they can guarantee for Roma is to not make the same mistakes they've done over the last 3 years. Because even if you've succeeded and won a Conference League trophy, even if you've gotten to a Europa League final, you still ended up making mistakes that you're now paying for. And those mistakes are not that different from what preceded then, from what preceded in the form of the last few years of the James Pallotta tenure, in terms of identifying names that, yes, maybe in the short run were good. And obviously, names like Renato Sanchez or Gini Wijnaldum were made possible only because financial fair play forced you to look at those names. It forced you to consider only loans. Now, Roma finally will be able to breathe a little bit more. This summer, UEFA should be more lenient towards Roma. Let's see. I think that could make a huge difference for us. The only exciting names so far are Chiesa and that Kosovan guy from Lille, Zagrova, you mean, Edon Zagrova. I think there is a whole bunch of names that we don't even know about. But that's what I want to stress is don't focus on the names. Forget the names. If we were going off of the excitement of names, as I said, Wijnaldum would have been amazing, an amazing player, and then we all know what happened. The names are not everything. So get excited about what will happen in preseason, what will happen when Roma discover a player that can make the difference in the kind of football that Daniele De Rossi wants to play, because that's what we have to focus on. If we are to follow the model of Atalanta, which is what De Rossi wants to do, and not because Atalanta are a small team or this or that, all that kind of, no, it's because Atalanta have gone from being a Serie B team to winning Europa League. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens through consistency and hard work. That's what Roma want to do now with Ghisolfi as their sporting director, or rather their technical director. His title is not sporting director just because Lina Suluku, the CEO, also oversees the sporting area. So with that trio, De Rossi, Ghisolfi, Soloku, the Friedkins want to change things up at Trigoria. Things have been going one way. The Friedkins want them now to go into a different direction towards a more sustainable idea of competing for whatever objectives you set out to compete, whether that's Champions League qualification or maybe a few years from now, Scudetto contention. Final comments, guys. Adam, Roma's Primavera constantly do better than Atalanta, but they keep finding gems to add to their first team. So disappointed in Pagano, Cherubini, Pizzilli this year. Any idea if next year will be different? As to what? As to whether we want to rely on them? Because those 3 players you just mentioned are exactly right now out of a contract. We have to see that. That's definitely something that I think with De Rossi is going to change too. You have a lot of kids, Joao Costa, you have Jan Oliveras. So players that may get a chance with the first team in preseason, and then we will have to see whether Roma really believe in them, whether there is something there. And with De Rossi, I'm fairly certain that if a player from the Primavera deserves a shot, he will get it. Then we shall see. But I think that surely also comes into the equation. Can you value what you already have? Um, because you don't have an infinite amount of money, and because you are, yes, without Champions League football for the fifth year in a row. Actions carry consequences. So if you have a bad season, you end up paying for it. Thankfully, this summer, as I said, UEFA more lenient, Roma doing much better financially. So let's see what that brings along the way. I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in today. It was great to be able to read the comments, talk with you guys. That's always something that I enjoy very much about these live streams. As I mentioned to start this live stream this week, there will be no episode up until next Monday. We will get back with John into the recording booth on Sunday and record. So a new episode will be out on Monday. In the meantime, I hope this live stream is able to satisfy you. If you like what we do at Roma Press, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Roma Press. Really, guys, any contribution means the world to us. So thank you so much also for tuning in, for subscribing, for liking, for retweeting. It all means a great deal. And we shall see each other pretty soon. I imagine that as the preseason approaches, as the Euros approach, we will get more news, more developments with regards to what Roma want to achieve this season. And hopefully, this upcoming season will bring finally what we want, which is more sustainable, more successful Roma that plays in next year's Champions League. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Until next time, Forza Roma as always.